Hi, I'm Femi Okay.
I'm Malika Bilal, and we are in Doha for the 10th anniversary of Al Jazeera English.
To mark a decade on air, we're hosting an open editorial meeting with some of the network's senior editors. We are talking about the cream of Al Jazeera, and this program is all about stories that matter to you.
That's right. The stream has covered thousands of topics, as you all know, all powered by you, our global community. Now, whether it's show pitches, guest suggestions, or digital participation, our audience is the driving force in helping us shape underreported stories.
Now, we have never put an open editorial on TV before. Usually we have our editorial meetings behind closed doors, but today, to help us vet your stories, we have Ingrid Falk. She is the manager of programs specifically for documentaries. Imad Musa is the manager of online. Salah Negam is the director of news at Al Jazeera English.
Now, pitching our editors, Andalusia Noel is an independent journalist coming to us from Mexico City. Mariam Al-Maslouhi is the founder of Dip Sauce. That's a podcast by and made for women of color in the Netherlands. And Akosia Hansen, she's a writer and actress in Accra, Ghana. Welcome to all of you. Now, for those of you watching at home, we want to know what issues are impacting your community that you think we should look into. You can join in on this conversation today by tweeting us with hashtag #OpenEditorial.
See, Malika, if you're going to do a good pitch, you need to know the character and personality of the person you're trying to pitch to. Definitely when I'm on the stream and trying to pitch to different producers, I know their weaknesses, their strengths, their passions. So let's see, to help people out there pitching, who are they dealing with? Salah, I have heard in your editorial meetings, people go in walking, coming out limping. They are fierce. If I was in an editorial meeting today, recreate that atmosphere for us.
The editorial meeting is fierce because we challenge all the ideas.
Yeah.
The first thing we do and think is, I'll take the other person's point and look into the issue you're tackling from his point of view. Because everyone, if I see the studio, for example, I'll try to tell the story from my point of view. But what about the point of view of the cameraman? How does he see me? Is he annoyed with me or not? So that's the first thing. Once you start doing that, then the discussion gets heated because everyone is very protective to his idea.
So is there a physical tick that you have where people know, oh no, Salah's not happy? Do you stroke your beard when it's a good story? Do you like take out your pipe when it's a bad story? Are there clues? The clues you can give us.
In the editorial meetings, mainly I look to the table.
Is that bad?
No,
that's good.
That's mainly I'm looking to the table until something attracts my attention, then I stand up and say,
all right.
Let's examine this.
All right, we are going to be studying your body language intensely.
Now I give my secret to all
Yes, no, this is good. And this is, I only actually, for me, for the future. Imad, for you, what kind of person are you to pitch to? Are you the optimist or are you the pragmatist?
Listen, my default is yes, unless proved otherwise. So I think I'm easier to pitch to than most people.
Nice.
And I'm not interested in the elevator pitch. I don't need a 10, 15-second version. I'll sit and listen. I'll sit and listen. But it has to be convincing. It has to be different. It has to go deeper than what you could find anywhere else.
All right.
If it's worth it, or you're pitching something that's interesting or to be done in an interesting way, using different tools that are available to us these days, then why not? As long as, of course, the basics of journalism are there, the accuracy and the depth and all sides and all angles being found.
I'm just checking Salah. Salah's not looking at the table yet, so this is good. He's still interested. Ingrid, very quickly, because we want to get to the pitches. What kind of editor are you? What do we have to tell you for you to go, yes?
Well, I think the point you said about who you're pitching to is, in my case, is more about which strand or which series or which part of the channel it's going to be. Because pitching a news story, an online story, is very different from pitching a documentary. I like film, so I get very excited, but I have to be really rigorous because in the end, we've got so many slots, so much money, and a huge world to cover. So I'm always looking for a perspective or a unique proposition behind something that can sustain us spending significant time. We have half-hour or hour slots on one subject and bring something new to the table. There are also a lot of other things. It's got to develop, it's got to have capacity to stand up. There are a whole lot of things, but the first thing is what's the proposition.
Okay.
It's
so
not
editors,
just the issue, it's how we're going to
listen out for something that you may like, because we'd love to take a pitch from this show and put it on our air. In fact, we're going to do that, one way or another. Somewhere. Guaranteed.
Well, there are lots of options.
As we
There
say,
are lots of
inshallah.
options. So now our community and those online, you watching at home, and those who are joining us here, they've heard the pitching process. They've heard how it goes. Let's go straight to one of the pitches that we received from someone who sent us a video comment. Now, this is Krista Blackman. She tweets us frequently with really in-depth, great pitches. Here's one that she sent via video. Have a listen.
The Western public has been told about the atrocities in Syria. But what if journalists started showing us more graphic footage of the crimes being perpetrated against the civilians of Aleppo? Would that motivate us to stop it? If activists shared unfiltered images of violence, would that move our empathy? When does telling a story of atrocity become a pornography of atrocity?
So I love this one because we're looking back at the history of Al Jazeera. And when Al Jazeera Arabic started, of course, they were showing images of the Iraq War. They were showing images of Palestine that other news companies weren't showing. How has that evolved, and what are your views on that? Salah, do you want to take that one on?
Yeah, that's a good pitch. It can be a story about us, about journalists and how they make selections and take decisions. But the most important thing is using graphic images or images of atrocities of torture. You think only of what is in the public interest. What does it serve? Does it shock people in order for them to take action and prevent that? Does it show the international community the extent of the atrocity so they can work towards stopping it? Or it's just shocking people for no reason?
Can you give us an example where you had to make that decision?
We don't show mutilated bodies or close-ups to bodies or really bloody images on our screen here. But in some cases, if you think that this can make a difference in the people's lives and exercises on the ground, then you do that. And I recall one incident, for example, from our network and from others. There is a famous picture on the front cover of Time magazine of the execution in Vietnam, just point blank. And that changed the course of the war there. And here I think we had a story about execution in the street of some of the Boko Haram fighters in Nigeria by police force. That was 5 years ago. And you had the pictures of the police force, the conversation between them, and actually the point of death. We didn't show the point of death, but we showed the atrocity itself. And that resulted in stopping that practice. Yes, there is a war going on there, but with less atrocities really from the police.
I think to add to that, the other thing about it is what goes around that. Now, you know, so you're making those decisions, but you're also, you know, if there are cases, to speak to the point that you mentioned about empathy, where you understand the experiences around that are beyond just the violence, that can give a much more, you know, human link to what's going on. So I think it's context, and they're very difficult decisions to make.
And it has to be very well calculated,
yeah.
Taking into consideration always the public interest. If there is none, don't show it.
Is there ever a time, Imad, when you've seen an image where you think, I'm not sure we should have put that out, or we should have put that out?
You know, the baby, the Kurdish baby that washed up on shore.
Island Kurdi.
Yeah.
That Jazeera decided that we would not show that image, although we knew full well that that picture was almost everywhere.
It was everywhere.
Everywhere.
With his face
everywhere.
in view.
But the decision was exactly what this your Krista said, which is it's not about news porn. It's not like that. We have our debates about, specifically about Syria, and specifically about cities under siege for such a long time. Is that look how history looks at Stalingrad. Even though people were eating dirt and eating human flesh at one point, it's pictured as a heroism, as an act of heroism, as standing up. Do you want to picture things as people being beaten down, or as people standing up for their rights?
That is a philosophy.
Well,
that's not just a process in the newsroom, that's a philosophy.
But it translates into day-to-day decisions.
Right.
But I think the other thing is, if you look across the schedule, and one of the, you know, obviously we have rules as well about this, that we actually have to follow those rules, but so it might be that, say, the Syria story, you know, we had we've got extraordinary coverage through news and through online stories. We had the first world documentary exclusive with the White Helmets, and that was about people living every day, surviving and being real agents of support.
It's how Al Jazeera
and then there were other
sees the world.
films that
Right.
came in with the bombing. So it's almost like the collective contribution can really help make sure that we're attaching to the human stories as well as the absolute dire graphic images.
Let me bring in another pitch. Mariam, I know you've got several pitches. The best one, what is it? Hit us with it.
The best one.
Yes, just go for your best one.
It's hard because being a Dutch Moroccan living in Europe, being Muslim, you know, comes with a lot of great stories. But I went ahead with Morocco and the globalization there, and how activists from all over the country, in their way, are fighting and raising awareness for this globalization. So the battle for land in Morocco.
The battle for land.
In Morocco?
In Morocco.
I don't
Yes.
understand.
Is that-
What's the? I don't see so the communities are rising up against globalization, or I didn't understand the connection.
There are different movements now taking place in Morocco, and one of them is in Imider, which is 300 kilometers from where the United Nations conference COP22 is taking place now, and this has been a protest by the local Moroccans for over 5 years. They have been consistently protesting, organizing against a mining company that has made their land infertile and their water almost undrinkable.
All right.
And
So
this
Mariam,
goes also.
Mariam, I'm going to stop you there because. Imad, you said you will listen to a pitch for a long time. We only have so long for the show. I'm
Looks
reading
like
your
Femi would do a better job on this
I'm
one.
reading your body language, and I'm seeing not enough interest for that to go on the air.
It's not that. I think there's got to be, you know, what you've explained is a situation, and it's a worthwhile situation to explore. Now we have to figure out, do you want an expose? Do you want a report? Do you want an experiential documentary alongside some of the protesters and getting to know their homes and their families and understanding a bigger lived experience of the news? Or, you know, what is the pitch?
More development needed.
That's the backdrop.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
the process of pitching itself. She gave a title, The Battle of Land in Morocco. That could be about anything. But actually, if she says 30 miles from where the COP20 is being
COP22.
held,
Yeah.
it's about a mining company that's spoiling the land. But that should be supported by statistics. How big is the piece of land? Are there samples of the water? Did people really hurt, and how did it manifest itself? Did they go to hospitals? So if she has these 3 or 4 pieces of information, that can be a start of pitch.
Come
Then it's-
prepared,
yeah.
bring the stats. Mariam, I'm going to move on because we've got some
So,
more pitches. Hold
okay.
tight for a moment. We're going to move on. Luckily, we have a post show. We'll get back to you, Mariam. Meanwhile,
Okay, so this is one, we actually got this pitch from 3 separate people. So I know
Okay.
something's there, and I know this is something that I could actually see being a stream show or a documentary. So take a look at this tweet. Rajiv says, I'm a regular viewer of Al Jazeera. I could put you in touch with Indian tea garden guys if you want to do a feature. Here's someone else who kind of fleshed out that pitch a little bit more. This is a video comment we got from someone who talks a little bit more about what that could look like. This is Upendra.
I come from Darjeeling in India, which produces the finest tea in the world. But for the past 2 decades, the tea garden workers have been suffering because the tea garden owners do not pay them proper wages, abandon the gardens, and often leave the tea garden workers to fend for themselves. This has resulted in massive socio-economic problem for the workers. Many of the workers have starved to death, and their children are now being trafficked out of the tea gardens to work in bigger cities or to work as prostitute. I hope you guys will cover the story so that the truth about tea gardens in India reaches the world. Thank you.
So Ingrid, starving tea garden workers.
It's a good pitch. It's a good pitch in the sense that you gave us context and you gave us a focus. The question I would then ask is, you know, you could do the story in a number of different ways, and we specifically have different strands to do it. You could pitch to Salah a new story in our India Bureau or IMAD. In terms of the documentaries or, in fact, programs, we have an investigative strand called 101 East, which I think this would be a good pitch to go to them.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do a very human experiential story where it's told through observing actuality, the sort of one character going through some sort of journey, then that could be pitched to Witness. But we each have a different flavour, so that the totality of what we're bringing to the screen is
But we complement each other.
Exactly.
It can be in the news and then one East, and you continue with the issue. So we can see two stories here, not one.
Yes.
The Tea Garden Boys, that can be a first person, a person who worked as Tea Garden, and he tells his story himself. But the human trafficking is a second stage of that. That needs further investigation, and that can be carried out online and in programs as well.
There's two things that, while I was listening to that pitch, that came to mind. One is that know the history or know what that company that you're pitching to has already done on that subject. Steve Chow has actually gone to Sri Lanka and done a whole thing about tea
institutional
gardens.
knowledge
Yes,
there.
I mean, you have to tool around on the website, on YouTube, through our videos. You can't be. We don't expect that you've watched for 10 years of content, but if we've just done it or something very similar. And second is patience, because an idea like that, we know it's happening and we know it's ongoing, so it might not be the first thing that we get to. So then, even if it's accepted, it might not be as immediate. So that's something that comes up constantly.
I'm feeling a positive reaction though to that pitch before we move on.
Nice. It's a nice human story.
Yeah. Okay,
Nice
very
human
good.
story.
Positive.
Yes.
I'm going to move on to Andalusia. Andalusia, your best pitch is what?
Okay, thanks for having me on. My pitch is that both The Stream and Al Jazeera has done a really great job of covering violence against women in Latin America, but there's also another kind of gender-based violence that has gotten very little coverage, and that is what's known as transfeminicidio, or hate crimes against transgender people. And Mexico is actually the second worst country in the entire world for assassinations of transgender people. And in the past few months in Mexico City, there has been a new movement that has risen up of sex workers and transgender activists who are rising up against the impunity, as that over 270 transgender people have been documented assassinated in less than a decade, and just in the past month there have been 12 people assassinated across the country. And I think it would be great for Al Jazeera to cover this and focus on why is this happening, because Mexico is considered an LGBTQ friendly country, yet hundreds of thousands of people backed by the Catholic Church recently mobilized to protest against LGBTQ people. And also there's full impunity in the majority of these cases. When transgender people are assassinated, their murderers are never found, the cases are not investigated, and also there's a full criminalization of them in the media. So there are these three angles to be analyzed, and also see why is it that people think that Mexico is friendly towards LGBTQ people, but what is the reality for transgender people and also LGBTQ in general?
What's the world's first ranking above Mexico? Which one is that?
It's actually the third.
Say again?
Brazil is #1 and the United States is the third, but this is also not taking into account population. So a country like Honduras, which is much smaller, is also very, very high on the list, but just per capita it's not.
I think it's fascinating. I think the two angles that I would be interested in is the church's relationship or the church's role in it, and also the media. It could become an exploration that we would go for. I wouldn't mind it. I'm wondering also if at the beginning you said it's Mexico's friendly to LGBT in general. And then you said, actually, why does Mexico have the reputation of being friendly if it's not so friendly? So I'm wondering, is it or isn't it?
Right. That has to do a lot with the laws. I mean, this is also concerning gender violence against women. Is that Mexico has passed many great laws. They're on the books about that they will respect, guarantee women a life free of violence, and also Mexico City allows people to actually change their gender identity on their official identification without any proof, etc. But that doesn't mean that translates into them living violence-free, lives free of
Andalusia,
violence.
let me just check in with our editors. Have you heard enough to make a decision about whether this is something that Al Jazeera would look into?
I have one basic question here. What is the percentage of people killed from different minorities? Transgender or non-trans, Indians, for example, blacks, Asians, whatever, in Mexico? And does this percentage equal the percentage of people who are killed in transgender? That will tell me whether it's a phenomenon that can be translated socially or just a normal, not normal, I mean, this is the rate. And I don't have that clearly because you always get these pictures, for example, about violence against blacks in the United States, and they say 200 blacks were killed or African Americans were killed this year. What is the percentage in the total population?
Are the numbers more important than the culture?
No, it's not about the numbers. It's about whether there is differentiation in treating a specific minority than the other people in the society. So if, for example, Egyptians in Europe are targeted more, then they might have a percentage of 20% rather than 10% in the general population. Right. So this is a piece of information crucial to make me start thinking about this or not. Is it different, higher or not?
So you're thoughtful. I'm going to push on because we're almost at the end of the show and I want to fit in at least one more pitch.
One more. So this one will be from the community. I love this one because it has potential. So we got this pitch. I'm going to show you a video so you can actually see what this pitch looks like. This is from Sadiq Zibakalam out of Iran. We're going to play this video. This is at universities, several universities across Iran. Our control room will play it. You can see it on your screens right there. So at many universities, there are pictures of, painted pictures of the U.S. flag and Israel's flag on the floor. So this person tweets us in recent days, there are lots of discussion around flag burning phenomenon in Iran. It was triggered by the act of a professor who you saw in that video there, who refused to walk over the American flag. Now people on social media, for the first time since the revolution, are questioning the tradition. So in the video, you saw him deliberately climb up the railing so he wouldn't step on the U.S. flag. Lots of different angles there. What could we do with it? Imad?
Fascinating. I do remember that I'm a Palestinian American. When I go on vacation or when I go to see my parents, I go to the West Bank town of Ramallah. And I do remember just 2 or 3 years ago seeing every single huge garbage, the ones of the municipality painted with an Israeli flag. And I hadn't seen that before. And I said, this is new. So I wonder
what's behind it. That's a thing. That's a really, I mean, I hadn't seen that, so thank you for sending that in. I think it's quite fascinating, but we'd have to unpick what's going on there. What are the forces at play? Now, again, you can do this in lots and lots of different ways, but that, you know, in some ways, that could be just what we've seen. A really interesting video clip that generates a huge online conversation. Or you could make a feature documentary about where Iran's at and its relationship with the US and Israel. You know, so if you're pitching, you've got to come into that a bit more.
What's your gut telling you?
Okay.
Be honest.
That's what I'm trying to do. Burning flag in the same country. So if you burn the American flag in the United States, that's protest against your own government. Burning a foreign flag in the United States could be tolerated but can trigger protests. Now take that to Iran. Burning Iranian flag in Iran will be a very big problem to the person who's doing it. Now burning Israeli flag or American flag or whatever flag that you don't have good relation with it might be tolerated. Some people might not like it, but in general it will be tolerated in Iran. So it depends on the society where burning flag culture can be tolerated or not and what it's used for.
What is interesting?
If it's about stepping on flags, I would be interested on if there was a lot of chatter about the professor who climbed over the rails to avoid it.
And does he do this every day?
It's not enough to say there's a changing attitude towards the United States and Israel, but maybe there is. So it could be a peg to jump into that kind of story.
Editors, sit tight. We're not done yet. We're going to our online show. Akozia, I am going to get you to do your one-line pitch. As a tease, the headline is? What's the
headline is what has been called an African schizophrenia, an identity crisis.
Very nice. All right.
To
Akozia, we are taking you to our online post show to be continued with your pitches at #OpenEditorial. Thanks for watching. See you online. Hello everybody, welcome to our online post show. So much more to talk about. We were trying to get as many of your pictures in. Thank you for using Open Editorial. Malika, where do you want to go to next?
Well, I want to go to Akosia because she gave her one-liner, and it was on Africa's schizophrenia, I believe is what you said, which of course is a great tease, a little bit clickbaity, but tell us, what's your pitch?
I like it already.
Okay, so it's basically the story I feel behind all the stories and the issues in Africa, where the African in modern day is trying to navigate their way through this new state and what they feel was a glorious past. And so you hear comments like, oh, this is not African culture, this is not our culture. And usually you hear those comments when there are human rights violations. For instance, marital rape is not even an issue to discuss because if I marry my wife, her body belongs to me for all eternity. Homophobia is not a conversation we even want to have. LGBT rights because it's Western. When truth has been told and studies have been done by amazing academics that homophobia is actually a Western import. African cultures actually did tolerate or even respect LGBT people. And I feel I can go on with so many lists, which I feel is basically because the African...
We hear you.
We hear you.
We hear you.
So sorry.
We hear you.
Yeah, we hear you. Akosia, what was that?
Okay.
What was that pause for? Okay, all right. So we've got the gist of it. We'll go back to Akosia in a moment.
I'm not sure I can answer your question, but I do think you've talked about the African, and I think as somebody who comes from South Africa, actually, we have to stop doing about that. We have to think of this continent as all, whatever they are, 54 countries, they're 3,000 languages. It's not one place. And I think the points you make are good, but I think we need to hear from a range of people from the continent in their own terms about how they're dealing with that and make it not a sort of a dumping ground for where everything's going wrong. I think you raise really interesting points about identity and about the balance between traditional, cultural, quote-unquote, cultural things covering all sorts of injustices. But I think the first step is to not really think of this as one big sort of, the kind of Africa as a basket case. We've got to get away from that narrative. We've got to hear some different narratives coming out of the continent, which is hugely diverse, and hear from people who have solutions in their own hands. They are agents of their own solutions towards these things. That's what I'd start looking for in a program.
I like this. The issues you bring up are what we debate every single day. Exactly what we bring up every single day. Whose standards? Who's saying whose culture or whose standards should be imposed on everybody else? For instance, we'll get a press release or some initiative from, let's say, UN, the ILO or labor organization or something about child labor. Who's going to define that? We know in our countries, we see them every day, 6, 7-year-olds, they're not in school, they're actually selling chewing gum or tissue paper in the streets at the traffic lights. Why? It's not because their parents don't want them to learn, but they're literally on the brink of famine. The kids go to work, either during school time or after. It's not that they want to. If you ask them, son, why are you working? They'll start to cry. So it's not like a people's choice. So, we look at this thing and say, we thank you very much, United Nations, for telling us that children shouldn't work. But guess what? We actually live in this world, and it's not working like that. All this preaching from outside is not working for us. So, and at the same time, we see the same roiling debates as in Eastern Europe, across the Middle East, the Arab world, and in Asia, India, for instance. What is modernity? Whose standards of modernity? Whose world are we supposed to be living in? How come we're not comfortable in our skin anymore? Those are exactly the kind we would hone in on it in certain specific examples. I don't think would be this overarching. I think it would be very hard to do a 1,000-word feature or a 2,000 even word feature about that one thing because it's so it's overtaken our lives these days in the 21st century. What does it mean to our cultures? Not everything in our cultures is bad. And sometimes we're made to feel like that.
We have huge audiences in Africa. In fact, I'm not sure, well, it's great you're coming from Ghana, but I think quite a lot, sometimes people make a lot of assumptions about Al Jazeera English being, the English-speaking world, but actually we've got huge audiences across West, South, and East Africa particularly.
A big shout out to our #1 audience on Facebook, Nigeria.
Yeah.
Hello, Nigeria.
175 million.
What is so interesting about what you said, if you have the budget and the time, there could be a very good series of programs called What is African? You take a trip in several African countries and examine the notion of African. If it is African culture, African art, African ethics even. And it can make a very good series that lasts for some time.
I love that idea. And there's a part of North Africa that doesn't even acknowledge the fact that it is African. We're not African, we're from the Middle East.
No,
it's like,
they're proud of that.
We tried. I mean, we tried. It doesn't address your issues, and I think you have raised important issues which we should address. But we tried with the, we started the series called My, and we started with My Nigeria, specifically because very often one country is represented in rather a one-dimensional way because there are a lot of very real reasons that it's in the news. But 170 million people are not all Boko Haram and terrorists and corruptors and scammers and whatnot. And so we wanted to hear what a range, I mean, it was only 6 people, it's very limited, but what Nigerians felt about Nigeria, which speaks to Salah's point about what do Africans think about Africa, what makes you an African.
I'm just showing them My Nigeria page here, and those 6 stories.
Very diverse,
big stories,
of course, it's just the tip of the iceberg. We do
groups even within one area. We even have so many ethnic groups even within one region of one country.
3,000 languages,
so many histories, so many different cultures. Thank you. So and you can imagine the difference in philosophies and where the break comes in with interruption and dealing with that identity crisis.
Absolutely.
It's a big discussion to have, and I feel it's the main thing behind a lot of the issues we have in Africa.
And can I just one note about Mariam's pitch, and you've been patient because we didn't give it too much time, but I like one way that you think very sharply that you found a peg. That the kind of story that you pitched probably wouldn't fly if COP wasn't being hosted by Morocco this year. Sad to say it.
Is a good thing.
Sad to say it. So you thought about, okay, these coal miners have been protesting, nobody's cared. Finally, I have, maybe the media will pay attention.
But sometimes when you get your attention drawn to something like this, then you go to it because media is not paying attention.
Yes.
And we can pay attention.
Agreed.
And we can investigate it. And we can
and
really
we mustn't
affect
forget the
lives
things
of
that
people
don't.
to the better.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It works
Mariam,
both ways.
what did you want to add, Mariam?
Sorry,
Go ahead. Mariam,
yes, I'd really like to react.
Yeah.
The thing is that 3 weeks ago, a fish vendor was killed in the north city of Morocco, which unleashed big protests in Morocco, calling for عدالة اجتماعية, social justice. And this is when activists really used the COP22 to raise awareness about this. They say there's a big sign that was held in Rabat saying, "Welcome COP22. This is the place where Moroccans are crushed," because the fish vendor was crushed. So what I'd like to do, or what I did in an article, is take it as a starting point that the fish vendor was killed trying to live off fish that was illegalized by a state because it was going to Europe, because Morocco has made a lot of European agreements about fishing, about land, about mining. So what you saw is this was used to address the issue of basic rights of having land. And I said Imeder as an example, but what I'd like to do is not only just scoop the top of all these subjects, but to show them what the layers of them is. And the layer is that Moroccans, just living off their country is being illegalized, essentially. And this is also a connection. That's why I really wanted to react when we were talking about the African. And how this translates in different ways. But then there's a point of us being united in the struggles of being post-colonial countries.
And you tapping into an interesting thing, because a lot of what we think about when we are looking at how to tell stories is commonality of themes, and the theme of land is just ongoing all over the world, and you could actually develop a really interesting series of which this could be one story and many others. It would be great to do. It's a good.
I think we're being taught a very important lesson by so many local Moroccans about the importance of land, about how they are so passionate and know so much about the environment. While, you know, me living in the Netherlands, you know, I can sometimes think of, you know, environment as this kind of an elite thing. Meanwhile, it is the Moroccans back home, my family, the people there who have taught me how valuable it is. And this is what we tend to forget, this narrative of, oh, environmental, well, there's a COP22 that's going to come from the Western world and come save the day. Well, it is the Western world that has really caused so many environmental problems in Morocco.
Mariam, I know there are a lot of people online that are thinking along the same lines as you are. I actually really like that pitch because I know there are people on Twitter who do as well. Picking up on the theme of land and expansion, this is a tweet we got. This is Dixon. It's a short and sweet one. He says, coffee has been grown in Kenya for over 100 years, but now the expansion of the Nairobi city is threatening farms. So it's not a very developed pitch, but it's an idea there. Rapid fire. Do you think it could work as a package, or as a documentary, or as a show?
There's underlying always. You could make that run and run, or you could do it short and sweet. You know, you could. It's got.
It can be a package in
good
news.
links,
You can expand it as a program, but it depends on how it threatens land in nearby Nairobi. Maybe it's a small plot, and maybe it's a bigger phenomena that affects a lot of people. Also, the impact on people is important. If it is small, but it has a very strong humanitarian side, that lends itself to news. But if it is small and it doesn't pose a phenomena, or you cannot expand it, then it might be a local story for a local newspaper. It depends also who you are pitching to.
But people, commodities and land as a combination is a recurring theme. Absolutely.
Rapid fire continues.
Okay, this is another one from Patrick, who says, investigate intellectual property theft from African startups by big corporations. He has a few examples in mind, but we won't ask him for those. But this one seems difficult.
We want to explore those, in fact. That would be a good start for our
Give us the details, Patrick.
Email us,
still
please, and
watching.
we can develop it.
That's an interesting.
And it's a really interesting story, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
We need to know more details, because we can develop it with them. That
Okay.
Sure.
Really,
Usually the accusation is opposite.
if he has concrete
And that's-
examples and evidence,
We'd have to investigate, but yeah.
All right, we have 45 seconds before we're off the air. So I'm going to say pictures.
Super rapid fire.
Thank you. Our time has gone so fast. So Mariam and Andalusia and Okosia, thank you for being part of this program. We really appreciate it. We pushed you, but that's just a little taste of what it's like to come out of Salah Negem's editorial in the morning. You lived. You're not limping. You're not bleeding. Congratulations. Thank you to everybody who pitched. Thank you, editors. And one of these, something that you heard, something online, will be a future stream show, maybe a news package, maybe a documentary, who knows.
I mean, just before we go, I wanted to read this last tweet. This is from Mosby, who's been watching, who says, all journalists should be watching AJ Stream. I'm getting to learn a lot about pitching and how that makes and breaks a story.
Good.
We hope you enjoyed it as well.
Thank you.
Nice job.